Page 3, Praise to Shakyamuni Buddha. To the founder, the endowed transcendent destroyer, the one gone beyond the foe destroyer, the completely perfected, fully awakened being, perfect in knowledge and in good conduct, Supreme guide of human beings to be tamed, teacher of gods and human beings, to you the completely and fully awakened one, the endowed transcendent destroyer, the glorious conqueror, the subduer from the shadow. I prostrate, make offerings, and go for refuge. To the founder, the endowed transcendent destroyer, the one gone beyond the foe destroyer, the completely perfected, fully awakened being, perfect in knowledge and in good conduct, Siddhartha, supreme guide of human beings to be tamed, teacher of gods and human beings, to you the completely and fully awakened one, the endowed transcendent destroyer, the glorious conqueror, the subduer from the shadow. I prostrate, make offerings, and go for refuge. To the founder, the endowed transcendent destroyer, the one gone beyond the foe destroyer, the completely perfected, fully awakened being, perfect in knowledge and in good conduct, Siddhartha, Lord of the world, supreme guide of human beings to be tamed, teacher of gods and human beings, to you the completely and fully awakened one, the endowed transcendent destroyer, the glorious conqueror, the subduer from the shadow. I prostrate, make offerings, and go for refuge. When no supreme amongst humans you were born on this earth, you paced out 7 strides that said, I am supreme in this world. To you who are wise then, I prostrate. With pure bodies, formed supremely pure, wisdom ocean like a golden mountain, fame that blazes in the 3 worlds, winner of the best, Lord, to you I prostrate. With the supreme science, face like spotless moon, color like gold, to you I prostrate. Dust free like you, the 3 worlds are not. Incomparably wise one, to you I prostrate. The Savior having great compassion, the founder having all understanding, the field of merit with qualities like a vast ocean, to you the one gone to thusness I prostrate. The purity that frees one from attachment, the virtue that frees one from the lower realms, the one path, the sublime reality, to the Dharma that pacifies I prostrate. Those who are liberated into liberation, the holy field qualified with realizations, who are devoted to the moral precepts. To you, the sublime community intending virtue, I prostrate. Homage to the Supreme Buddha, homage to the Dharma refuge, homage to the great Sangha. To all 3, every devout homage. To all worthy of respect, bowing with bodies as many as all realms, atoms in all aspects, with supreme faith I pay homage. Do not commit any non-virtuous actions. Perform only perfect virtuous actions. Subdue your mind thoroughly. This is the teaching of the Buddha. Spark, a visual apparition, a flame of light, an illusion, a drop of dew or a bubble, a dream, a flash of lightning, a cloud. See conditioned things as such. Through these merits may sentient beings attain the rank of all-seeing, subdue the foe of faults, and be delivered from samsara's ocean, perturbed by the waves of aging, sickness, and death. To page 15, the Heart of Perfection of Wisdom Sutra. I prostrate to the Arya Triple Gem. Thus did I hear at one time the Bhagawan was dwelling on massive Vultus mountain in Rajagriha, together with a great community of monks and a great community of bodhisattvas. At that time, the Bhagawan was absorbed in the concentration on the universal phenomena called profound perfection. Also at that time, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya looked upon the very practice of the profound perfection of wisdom, and beheld those found aggregates also as empty of inherent nature. Then, through the power of Buddha, the Venerable Shariputra said this to the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara: how should any son of the lineage train, who wishes to practice the activity of the profound perfection of wisdom? He said that, and the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara said this to the Venerable Shariputra: Shariputra, any son of the lineage or daughter of the lineage, who wishes to practice the activity of the profound perfection of wisdom, should look upon it like this. Directly, beholding those five aggregates also is empty of inherent nature. Form is empty, emptiness is form. Emptiness is not other than form. Form is also not other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, discrimination, compositional factors in consciousness are empty. Shariputra likewise all phenomena are emptiness. Without characteristic, unproduced, unceased, stainless, not without stain, not deficient, unfulfilled. Shariputra, therefore, in emptiness there is no form, no feeling, no discrimination, no compositional factors, no consciousness, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no visual form, no sound, no odor, no taste, no object of touch, and no phenomenon. There is no I element, and so on, up to and including no mind element, and no mental consciousness element. There is no ignorance, no extinction of ignorance, and so on, up to and including no aging and death, and no extinction of aging and death. Similarly, there is no suffering, origination, cessation, and path. There is no exalted wisdom, no attainment, and also no non-attainment. Shariputra, therefore, because there is no attainment, bodhisattvas rely on and dwell in the perfection of wisdom, the mind without obscuration and without fear. Having completely passed beyond error, they reach the endpoint of nirvana. All the Buddhas who dwell in the three times also manifestly completely awaken to unsurpassable, perfect, complete enlightenment in reliance on the perfection of wisdom. Therefore, the mantra of the perfection of wisdom, the mantra of great knowledge, the unsurpassed mantra, the mantra equal to the unequaled, the mantra that thoroughly pacifies all suffering, should be known as the truth since it is not false. The mantra of the perfection of wisdom is declared, Tayata Gate Gate Paragate Parasamgate Bodhisoha. Shariputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, should train in the profound perfection of wisdom like that. Then the Bhagawan arose from that concentration and commended the Bodhisattva Arya Avalokiteshvara, saying, well said, son of the lineage. It is like that, it is like that. One should practice the profound perfection of wisdom, just as you have indicated. Even the Tathagatas rejoiced. The Bhagawan, having thus spoken, the Venerable Shariputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara, those surrounding in their entirety, along with the world of gods, humans, Asuras, and Gandharvas, were overjoyed and highly praised that spoken by the Bhagawan. To page 25 for the short mandala. Sashi Pogi Joshin Meitong Tra Riwabling Jini Gemba De Sanye Shindi Mide Ruwaye Droga Nanda Shinla Chupa Shu Jetsa Lama Dapa Kinanye Juga Gala Jinzen Dindine Zeta Zanve De Zeman Sakye Choki Chodo So Idam Guru Ratna Mandala Kandiryatayame Sanje Jodan Saji Janan La Janjo Vado Dani Jazan Take Jinsa Jive Zanan Je Dola Benje Zanje Dobara Sanje Jodan Saji Janan La Janjo Vado Dani Jazan Take Jinsa Zanan Je Dola Benje Zanje Dobara Sanje Jodan Saji Janan La Janjo Vado Dani Jazan Ake cheche chewe sanan che dola penche sanje dobara Kanga doze nye zawe dawa danche bawa ye tambe shune tenze we kodam de la chaze lo ninde shiwa tsuna kushi nishi tenze khayin Dola wenpa che na lang shi nishi ten ten tenze wang kanda yang de me tuna namba kune naso de son Ninde cheche zimbe zache sanje jine yun de la chaze lo Tunye nyenche zonde chewe lan, chi che sinze kanche tende kwen, chana pima tenze chezo lan, so de so shen de lon choshu. Panden zawe lama rumba chen, taki nyingara pende de shune, kante che me kone che zonde, goson tuje kuto ze to so. Aye da, kulung kumya kush chapshu asta.
Correct one's motivation.
Oh yeah, that go come lo. That really me say ni yung chamanya sha. Teba chimbe. Tijeng chamanya sha. Kesi shigido ni ti nya. Jizun chamba gombe ge zewe da ma sun shen jo. Jizan dinje jin yin ji chuma ge wa sang bo yin. Mangbo ji zambuling chu 탐제 좀년대 이 송고 저시고 단데 지진 참바 공부 송신 요로 지진 참군
Right.
개워 상무래도
Larella. Rejoice, thinking how special this time to be able to hear about the 4 close placements on mindfulness, particularly the way they're set forth according to the Mahayana vehicle, and that they were set forth by the protector Maitreya. So fortunate to be able to hear that. We tend to think that all the teachings we hear, Buddha Dharma, came from Shakyamuni Buddha. Well, this particular teaching comes from Maitreya. So fortunate to hear that.
Oh yeah. 다음도 뒤유 참만이샤 시우지 티코뇨 요로.
Yeah.
아니 망보지다 티보 첨부 뭐라서 슝네 셰베다 뒤유 참만이샤 세야데다 뭐다 용라로지 디리단데 디리다. 아디나라 니 단다 디링어도 디자인로지 게마 체제시기로.
Larella.
다 디자인제기 당보디 니 참만이샤 미유스 믹베 먼저 배나 류 참만이샤 소 참만이샤 니 심초 두즈기 참만이샤 두즈기 미유 카레스 다 기생한서 오지 셰사인 봐 참바단 셰럽 가능 다 건디오 가둘라 참바단 셰럽스도 다 간다 류 미과 체연도 류래야 아니 류중 오월 따연도 디마제베 시제로 디간래야 아니 네트웨어 류크랑 오버디 간데 이미 짓다데 아니 템바 샤신베가네 네 셰럽 제바 체수 다 지난다 템바다 셰럽 상무님도 연구요로 갑디 템바 니르샤스야게 네 템바 니르바샤고스 코야 믹세디 아니 직배 내저 요된 조심해 템바 마제바 되된 거지
Okay.
근데 지금 고고 있어요
Well, Larella. So we've heard a lot of these 4 close placements on mindfulness. We hear this all the time. And common teaching, the way it's laid out here in terms of the great vehicle is in common with that, which we hear all the time. And we're looking at these close placements of mindfulnesses under the context of 8 headings, which is on page 24, these decisive analyses. Essentially, we look at first the objects that we're meditating on, which are the 4 body, feelings, mind, and phenomena. But also, you will recall, we also looked at the very different definition. Now we're on page 27. The definition of that close placement on mindfulness, according to Compendium of Knowledge, being the nature of mindfulness and wisdom. This is very important because here, in terms of mindfulness, for example, if you take the focal object of body, you're mindful of your object. You recollect it. You do not lose that focal object. And within that, you use wisdom to analyze its attribute. So very much here, mindfulness is stressed. That's why it gets the name close placements of mindfulness, because you are not forgetting the focal object. And within that constraint of holding the focal object, you're analyzing it with wisdom. So therefore the definition therein.
다 먼저 미바디 류트만이 샤기 미바디 키싱 드simba지 치류 나글류 지나닝게 류스체 아 디지단다 미바 티샤고요로
알겠습니다.
디 주심바시 다 초와라이나 좀 초와 대화 동에 당용 som스체 초와라 숨도가 돼.
So last week we left off looking at these objects of observation of our first category, which is close placement of mindfulness of body, of which there were three: the outer characteristics, the inner, and that which is both. So three divisions of body. Now we come to the second object of focus, feelings, of which there is happiness, suffering, and equanimity listed on page 24.
다 초와시도 용화라고 그래. 용화데 초와 오라 용화.
Yep.
심중 간실라 용화들라 아니 초와시기요와. 다 가르쳐고서는 초와 심바스 대화세 초와 심바스 용화들라야지 이침바라고 지로.
나를.
어딘데지 초와 심바들라 대화스. 초와 심바 많이 바슬라비도 셈이 미대와 셈 툭대베 직패 가서 그래다 셈라야지 배 셈라야다 이 미친 바라고 지로와 이 미친 밤 아니 지금 마데베릭 또 지금 연구여러 하다 디다 동에 소 동에 다디 녀외전에 샤고라 어디다.
Now this second focal object of feelings, definition of the mental factor is the way that one experiences the object. So what this is really talking about is the type of experience that's happening by way of feeling. So if the mind feels the object in a pleasurable way, there is a mental happiness or a bliss. Conversely, if the mind is upset or projects or is ill at ease when it experiences the object, there is suffering. So those are feelings.
다 사제기 초와 대화디 다낭한솔 여러와 다 초와들이야 초와 사제기 초와 상매기 초와 다 상매기 초와디 다낭한솔 여마로다 뇨뇨 마르다 다낭한솔 겨와 찌글에 상매기 대화 춘 뇨뇨 마르다 다 사제기 초와 대화 베나시네 톱뇨 요레 베스 파시나 삼디 무시 니시지 데도 톱뇨 요레 초와 사제기 초와다 코발이 예베 초와디 이등한솔 뇨마뇨스케 이 뇨마뇨스케요만 창마 뇨심바레 겨와 망볼랑제 사제기 초와 대화데 뇨세버 답변한 알아서 두지 근데 지루하다 알아서 남시 야고로체 아니 지 류라 나자에 메베체 아니 칼라데 초고르제 자 아니 암조라 네주 다만더제 마코체 아니 수수 예용게 미드돌레 강에세 개매워체 인데로지 내가라 아니 지 기우르시 도와라 수수수 기우르시 당아 기우 인 삼사르시다 어디 사제 소와 대화 되려다 이 쯤바르시도 하다 다데데 기우르시도 아 삼사르시도 아니 데 가제니다 사제 소와 어딘데로 와다 신의 대화도 저래 알아서 뒤준다 망고시지 되베기 대화도 줬을 대화 인 친구라 때서다 동해란 용어래 돼 사제 소와 대화 창마다 동해 용어래다.
Now then, looking at the kind of contaminated and non-contaminated pleasures. So firstly, the non-contaminated variety we have not experienced at all in this life, because we don't know what it's like to experience a pleasure that is non-contaminated. Conversely, we have experienced all the time the contaminated variety, even within the states of calm abiding, within the states of the desire realm, within the states of the various dhyani states of concentration. All of those are within the experience of contamination, which we have experienced in past lives, still within the samsaric constraint. And then more kind of closely, when the weather's good, when we're not sick, when food we eat is good, when there's no bad news filtering in, when our friends left and right, we're getting on well with them, we hold that as a type of pleasure, isn't it? But it's still contaminated. In short, everything we experience in the desire realm, even if it's karma abiding, is in the nature of dissatisfaction, suffering, or contaminated pleasure.
다 동해다 가서 당 어때고 말해봐. 마지바들이 마지바 용인시도. 직도 직배 동에 차도 차배 동에 앵아란저 저 초고대 카체배 동에 네 응어보 동에 응어보던데 마라베 동에 근데 망고도 하다. 그래서 용예들이 처음에서 심바 많이 봤을 때이 미친 받치니 저라고 됐다. 두슬람나네 동에 어디 저 동에 시고라데.
And then, well, suffering, we all know that. Directly we experience that when there's bad speech from others, when we don't want to see others, or we have to separate from those that we love, we like. We don't get what we want, we get what we don't want. And then that causes that mental ill at ease of suffering.
배진 단다 네게 처와 땅념디 간저 시라 뇽투고에서 말하게 도스타디로 간저 만차 사제 처와 대화다 동해 짠짠 갈라 로데게서 뭐지 사제 처와 땅념디 배진 이와 3D 시버드바네 메시 간저 사제 처와 땅념디 뇽투고에서 말하게 간저 뒤지 땅념디 요래 간저 뒤지 땅념제로와 지니디 dāi mārī, nye mārī, pārmārī sēchē, jīg sīm chānyāmbā, dēdēwa jōrwa, dēla dūjē dāng nyōm sī kōrā.
Okay.
Tā tsōwa dāng nyōm sē dī, māngbō chī ngā rāng zōla yō tīng kōrā dēl, tī pē chī, tā ngā rāng samzir dā, dē bē na, ngā rāng zō mē chī shokwa yā lāne, gōndā māñchē sō samdāng rō rwa. Yā mē na sō chē tsōwa dēwa rē, yā mē na māñchā dōngē rē dā. tsōwa dāng nyōm dī yōwa yā bē chī, 삼디 시와도와 내미슈지 삼디 시외 인라를 셰로 하지다 당념데 아니 비진 가고 인사르다 소당녀 가고 인사르 두다디.
Let's look at the third category of equanimity, of the three types of feeling. Well, plainly speaking, we probably don't experience this third type of feeling at all. I mean, most of our feelings are these contaminated blisses, which we think are happinesses, or suffering themselves. I think very much that this feeling of equanimity relates to the fourth level concentration, dhyana, where you are absorbed in that state of equanimity. Okay, there's a difference if we do a friend, stranger, enemy meditation and we discriminate neutrality, but that's not the same as feeling. I'm really talking from my feeling how it is here, my experience. I think that when we get up in the morning to when we go to bed at night, most of our feelings are of these former two type. Like either we have these contaminated happinesses or we are suffering. I think that equanimity feeling is, as I said, fourth level concentration, absorption.
Oh, that 지난다 샤다 단다 다 디젤 말레라 다 디디고체 다네 셈라 다야메 셈 미과 셈데 남시라 넘버 시바다 셈니 넘버 시바 다 이들레라고도.
The minds are taken to be primary consciousnesses. It should be easy to understand that focal object.
다 뒤중 하나도 저만이 시작이 네 셈나 따연데 된다. 다 제일 공배 림바디나라 레들리그레들 세리기 차서 셰베 신이 좋아하고 어디 삼무다나 야고요래 세 세싱 변한거 우중 고망보 자니미모 가시 냠뇨 용구도 하대 우중 고망보 제데니 세리기 차딩 원심도 어디라 셈네 제데투나 아니 셈 때문에 샤 차도고요다.
Well, close placement upon mind as an object, we could say it is this clear and knowing aspect of the mind. By definition, the conventional mind, the relative nature of the mind being clear and knowing. And some people experience that when they do the breathing exercise and they experience the mind's lucid wakefulness or clear knowing nature. and they place the mind there, place the awareness there. That is this close placement on mind.
다 추de 먼저 초와 마인베 심중 탐제제 따라와 초와 마인기 심중 탐제제 안 데미디지 와 당조 ngobolena 아니 펜보 셰와 데미디지 수 셰와 데미디지 여러와 다 아니 데미디지 당 뒤제 마인베 아니 두마치 추 탐제레스다 추 데미니 셰 미고라
Now, when we take the fourth category, phenomena, we are focusing on all mental factors that are not feelings, and non-associated compositional factors and uncompounded phenomena. So, these non-associated compositional factors, when you break down all compounds, you've only got forms, consciousness, or this category here, which is non-associated compositional factors. And then there's the uncompounded phenomena as well.
어디 단다 테마니샤기 시니 테마 다 테마니샤들 시샤고 당 데미글라야 류소심 추 시샤고 김쟁카레 슬라위나 어디 김제요레 스타로 김쟁카레 랍데 당보 아니 류샤고 김쟁카레 저 테마니샤고 미글라 당보 류샤고 김쟁카레스나 지원함 류라 다게 된 당스로 지바스는 것수 심수 겨워요 수교도도 네 류라 다게 된치그레스로 다게 된치와 인자 아니 류미고 계정모자고 요레스
So next the question comes, why are these four objects cultivated as objects of meditation? Why focus on them? Body, feelings, mind, phenomena. Well, firstly, we focus on body. Sentient beings have a body as a focus. As the basis, we have to have that focal object of a body.
다디네 초와라 다게 롱주베 시르와 그래서 롱주 제가 여러와다 초와디도 롱주베 시세상 초와샤레스다.
Feelings, why feelings? Because feelings accrue according to the way we utilize things, whether that be pleasurable, non-pleasurable, or neutral.
Similar 다게 ngo보당스러워.
And mind, well, that is really nature of self.
최라 다쳐서 군의 녀모마당 아니 최 때문에 시험 군의 녀모 바로와 다 되자시나 디모도 상마대 내용거라 대소 나한테 대화 남장 최 남장 최도 뭔가 시험 밤에 최인 베시 스타도 돌아야 착신 밤에 최
오케이
와 뭔가 시험 봐서 착신 밤에 시험 밤 뭔가 시험 템버도 시험 밤에 최도 제단다 단답디 티징기 아니 정말 이제 손이 정말 심바스 템버트에 정말 심바스로
알겠습니다.
어디다 시기로 대밤에 시들에서
So that fourth one of phenomena, what's the purpose of cultivating or meditating on that? Well, there is this thoroughly afflicted class. So we know that there are these afflictions, anger, desire, and so forth. But really, attachment, because this is coming from the point of view of the great vehicle, we are abandoning these objects of attachment and ways of looking at them as having any type of true existence. So they become, afflicted in terms of what is to be abandoned, but pure in terms of their antidote.
No, the kundu 다다 나 kundu 손주들와.
맞아요.
다들 니와 곰주들다 곰주들와. 미바지 곰주 다 곰당 칸데레스 셰연데들라. 곰단들라 아니 투모 곰단직다 투모 마임바 곰단직 니샹고라.
So then in the compendium of knowledge it states clearly the things that are thoroughly afflicted, the abode of the self, or the base of enjoyment, and the thing that is the self and the things that are completely purified class. So now coming to how to meditate, how to cultivate, there's a common way and an uncommon way. We'll go through those.
저단다 당당한 저 천이간라 아니 르조 심지신라 란지 천이니니 다세 랑 천이다 지천이 라인바 지천이데 아니 투모인데 다주세 랑 천이데 투모 마인바로 샤용 거로다 지단다 로다 랑 지단 검주데 투모다.
Right, so the way of meditating in a common sense is that you're going to examine the specific and general characteristics of each of the four focal objects.
랑 칭이다 지칭이다 저도 투모 다래 투모데 가래라나 틱젠다 팀이 투모르샤.
Okay, so now so let's do that again. So you've got that common mode of cultivation, and in this common mode of cultivation or meditation, what you're going to do is meditate on the characteristics that are both specific and general. Why common? Because they're common with both vehicles, the great vehicle and the root vehicle.
들으시지. 고된 들으시. 배나 당부 투모한테라야 아니 지칭이 따윤디 아니 미다 동에 동안 담에 지칭이 싫어. 아주 르르 미군디 르미다 동에 동안 담에 대신에 초미다 동에 동안 담에 심미다 동에 동안 담에 아니 최근날라다 두머체다 두제 요인자 미다 동안 담에 여러 뒤에디 아니 질러 파 샤용고도 하트자 미다 동안 담에 샤운디다 디시 냠레나라 수디용 거다 제일 레기로 지다 미다 동에 동안 담에라 먼저 르 당부 르중 오월라 따로 르랑 그 진이라 르라니 오월라다 아니 정말 르를 맞다 아니 르지 오월데 다 미다 거래다 다 거래도 다 조조 따용디 장가라 아니 간조 사제 녀월레 풍부 동해대배 제주시 미다 동해 동안 담에와 어디다 지진이 차용고도 어디디 저만이샤 시갈라다 다딜라 미다 동해 동안 담에디 딜라다 저만이샤 시갈 켜버려야 되네
common in the sense that we are going to meditate on all of these four being impermanent, suffering, empty and selfless, right across those four, common and general to them. Let's take an example. We'll take the first of body, and we're going to meditate on the body's impermanence. It's being in the nature of dissatisfaction or contamination, suffering, empty and selfless. We meditate on the fact that the body is impermanent because it's a product of karma and delusion, subject to clinging at the five aggregates. Its nature is suffering, dissatisfaction, and it's also empty and selflessness. So these four general qualities apply to all of the four close placements along.
Yeah. 저한테 당부 미다고 따야지 수수 룰라다고. 대다연도 에네 람림게 단데 치워 미다고 공바데 다다데나라 디용고도 대하고 쉬지도 알아.
So let's look at that. When we take the first of the four of seals of a Buddhist, all compounded phenomena are impermanent, we're going to apply that to our meditation on mindfulness of the body. And just as we do that, it's exactly the same in the Lam-rim when the first thing you meditate is on death and impermanence. The fact that
사제 탐제 동해와 슬라운드로.
Yep.
사제 탐제 동해와 레라윈데. 당아란저 삭제 뇨모단 제바. 뇨모 삭과스도 뇨모라고 여러와. 대단 제바. 당아저 코에게 뉴주 탐제 삭과단 제바래서. 제장을 한서 삭바단 제 뇨몬단 제와 아니 삭바단 제베 최 탐제 동해 버려 슬라빈데네 코에 뉴주 탐제 독대라 동해된 버려 봐셔다 어디 쉐인 거다
all contaminated phenomena are afflicted or in the nature of suffering, meaning that everything in the cyclic existence is together with contamination, so therefore its nature is true sufferings.
他缺他们这东西大没哇，现在的东西大没哇，他的人家特别在意的，大家让我这你懂啊，人家特别在意的大没哇，是的的了，人家特别认为个大懂为那大没哇的是，他的等到贴不起你搞了可有印象，我的了可加些呢，大的多，
All phenomena are empty when you look at this seal. From the vantage point of all of the Buddhist tenet schools, well, they're going to accept a self that lacks being permanent, unitary and autonomous, and then the other level of being self-sufficient, substantially existent. So therefore, that comes in there.
To yung nangba sanjebe ta chög dom shi se gro ba chög dom shi se de saje duje damje midawa saje damje 동해와 최담제 돈시 담아 냥엘레 대비 시바스 다디 남과산제베게 최 탐제 디나는 뒤로 최고 dom시스디다 디 디나는 뒤로 요라 다디 송용고도 와데
this is laid forth, these four seals within Buddha Dharma, that all compounded phenomena are impermanent, all contaminated phenomena are suffering, and all phenomena are emptiness and all phenomena are empty, and nirvana is peace, are the four seals, and everything that can be known within Buddha Dharma, or from that vantage point, is subsumed therein.
다 랑 tinishya undu ane lu tamanisha, tsaw tamanisha, chwe tamanisha, sim tamanisha te yegi. ane karsana rang zela ya lu la jungwa dan jungju ni istaba lu yorang anzu lu la. Anzu lu la samlo tanyan de ane ngara lu de jungwa shi, sa chwe me long shi. ane jungju de ane ta dan, pakwa dan, sha dan. jungwa de je de gyuwa do ane jungju chung rang anzu ra. Adi lu ki ngogo la taya de tanda durdu waji lu ngo randi dire ta di lu la meshi jig yo mara di rang singi ta ko jimze dire.
Now, on the bottom of page 25, we start to go into the specific characteristics of each of the four, not the general ones we've just been through, but what is specific to each of the four objects of meditation. The first one, body. Well, what's specific to the body is that it is made up of elements that turn into what's called here evolutes. To put that more into better English, the body is made up of fire, air, earth, and water. And what does that change into? It changes into things like flesh, skin, and bones, basically. Well, we know then that what's the specific of feeling? Well, it's the entity of experiencing something.
아니 심라 미과치와 다 안다디 와 셈 때문에 샤시네 심라 미과치병고 와 심라 미과치병고
and then
믹지징고 그래 셈이다 유일 미과치가 오라고 어디를 믹지세.
With respect to the mind, the entity of observation, meaning that the mind can function as something that knows its object, experiences its object.
다 최라 심중라서 그러나 영어 강이 받다 다 고랑 수수수수 다다 담한다 여러 어디에 되래.
셈스그러.
심중당 아니 미다과당 동반이당 다다 도서 상마디나 코로라.
Alright, 알레 셈낭라. Sorry, yeah. Excuse me. So with respect to phenomena, the entity of mental factors and so forth, so these things such as emptiness, impermanence, these types of... Yeah, all of those things like afflictions like attachment, aversion, and those mental factors. Yeah, remember we said that everything other than feelings, all mental factors other than feelings fall in this category.
다데 투모스도 팅메다 틱진 투모기 곰자단데 미유시단데 예를 term니샤 다 투모 마이바 수수께지 셰운데 달아야다 숨도와 믹바 이치 톱주 톱에 되버봐 어디 다디닝 저거도 하세요.
So now that brings to an end what is in common with both vehicles in terms of the four close placements of mindfulness, the great vehicle and the Rujana vehicle. Now what's uncommon? We're going to look at that in terms of three divisions. Sorry, Gisela. Objects of observation, mental engagement, and attainment. Page 26.
뭐 믹바딜라 니랑게 랑 루코나라 미그레스와 니랑게 랑 루코나라 미 찬세나지 란신이게 룰라 미그레스타 미베차와 셰용고다데.
Difference in focal object. The hearers and solitary realizers meditate, observe on their own bodies, whereas bodhisattvas observe bodies of both self and other.
미베차와데 체로 투모 차송아 다 일레체와데 니란나지 미다과 소 일레체스도다 미다과단 간사 담에 좀 담에 락바잠 일레체도 그러바 디 겸메시지 장sem남지 최기 체마들 미미과스 동반이 와 템바마 주베 거네다 템바마 주베 거 까디 단다 간서 우마란 주바 송 인자 당분이네 아니 비나 니란람라 슈두니도 돈니도 켈렌시게요 말이라 시다마와다 도대베 둠들 슈니야 니랑 남라 슈두니 저와 되저게 돈이 또 캘렌식이요 말에 당분이네 년도 링에도 돈이 또 캘렌식이요 말에
그래서
제가 아니 장심난게 덴바마도와 최 참아매 와서 덴바마도와 권에 에네 다용고레스 니랑게 다 두고요 말에서 다 겨발래서
What is the difference then by way of mental engagement, the way they focus their minds? Well, the hearers and solitary realizers will mostly meditate on impermanence and so forth, whereas the bodhisattvas are not observing the signs of phenomena in them, the lack of true existence in those phenomena. So remember that this teaching is set forth according to the middle way autonomous school, and from that point of view, these other tenet holders, the initial two tenet holders, don't enter into a realization of emptiness straight away. They don't accept that they do that. What they are focusing on are the gross notion of the non-self of person being its impermanence. Whereas the bodhisattvas straight up will go straight into the lack of true existence of all phenomena and not observing the signs of those phenomena. So a different approach.
다 토바스도 데부딜레멘다고 요레스. 토베 데부딜 가르스나 니라남지 사제유 루소단 태와 코네시디 곰제네. 로 사제가 거에 사제니 원래 풍부단 테네 거래 타르 타바지고 토베시디로 왔다 간다디 사제 단에 니라난지 년도다란제난지 사제유 루소단 태와 코네시디스데 라니 이러다 라니 에네 사제 레뇨옹게 루와 사제 동해 풍부대 빵바 디코네시도 거래 타르와 대치도 에네 딱 검제 대부 카르토고르스나 아니 년도 다좀베고 니랑 다좀베 공방 거래 탈sam사 다 대바다 거래 타베 타바디 사제지 동해단 태와 짬지로 왔다 간다 장세남지 대단 재미데 니게 치데 마인바 미네베냥데로 산제지 공방 미네베냥데 어디에치도 에네 직사제 윤류된 테마데 된데 딱이요 말은 저 미네베냥데 산제지 공방 또 대부디네 장세나라 아니 산제지 공방 도도요 근데 연구 여러 제전 대부 톱자 맨다고 누구도 하다
And different attainments are attained. Initially, for the hearers and solitary realizers, their focus is just becoming free of the contaminated aggregates, which are a product of karma and disturbing emotions, and becoming liberated by doing that, only for themselves. So they meditate on that, the aggregates being contaminated in terms of having the cause of karma and delusions. They become free of that gross afflicted state, and then they get the fruit of an arhat, of either of those two vehicles, of hearer or solitary realizer. Whereas, which is the first level of nirvana, the nirvana. Whereas the bodhisattvas, they are concerned with not only the sake of their own freedom, but the sake of freedom of others. And their goal therein is the non-abiding nirvana of the complete state of Buddhahood. So they have a different focus, a different attainment as well.
다 참만년샤시 공급이 줌생 가래스와 고바 가래스 고바 데르다 고바 숨바 데르와
나도. So thirdly, then what's the purpose? Why meditate on them at all?
다 데베야고도 딘시랑도라 주바치베 치레스 딘시 먼저 참만년샤 공발라 데네 딘시기 냠랭가라 야 주도레스 다데 디 삼노데 디 마스티네 subject 단지도 아데마 삼노단tum나 야고 쉬우도 하러.
This is really wonderful, because here what the purpose is, for the sake of engaging in what is to be adopted and what is to be abandoned or discarded with regards to the four truths. So here we're relating it directly to those four truths. That's the purpose of it.
단단한서 뒤진 나타나서 덴바시 다 망보 하고 땅에 가디오 있는 덴바시 로야 된 망보 방보거나 낭바친이도 덴바시 로주고요. 어디 개천보래로 다들 낭바 제차네 아니 배다 산제 고마마도서 대시 냠내가나 도다 데메 조사요 말다
I always encourage people that are new to the path or new to Buddha Dharma to study these Four Noble Truths. But then really, when one thinks about it, until that state of full awakening is attained, you are meditating on the Four Truths.
다 대시기 나라 단다간저 다 직등에 친구도 제비나 덴바시 단도 마제버 먹어체 당보들라 동에 좀 된대지 동해 시와차 군주방와차 고봉원의 람곰버차 송여와 디셈나라마 코던데 샤고레스 디 당보디 시고레스라
Without going into the Four Truths in a very vast way, essentially, Lord Buddha said, know suffering, abandon the cause of suffering, actualize cessation, and cultivate the path. And to set forth the Four Truths under this is good to know. It's good that we know.
다드네 류트만이샤 고명도 사제냉이 랭지 동해 중오 시버다 동해 시버 차세다 류트만이샤 공발라데네 네 다데레도 왕탄다 류란지 신이 따연도 수수간저 류데 네 오데 중화 중규 다니레와 한 류르 오네 류르 따연도 지상에 라인 봐 게 따연도 초당류 니그면도 동해전냐니 동해전냐니 이거도 지금 초당년 이로 지금은 들라야 돼 삼로대로 담배 계절에로 제가 그 삼로 산산다 뒤져요 삼로대 땅대라 제가 초당년데 견자 오늘 민두 삼사르지 동해전냐로 저래샤로
알레
동해전냐로 저래샤는데 제가한테 룰을 따연데다 룰마 직 따연데 스스 룰을 직 따연데 근데 지 동해그란 시로 짱짱로 좀이지 그래도 제가 아니 동해 시월 차서 류트만이 샤고 오 류란지 오를 따연데 아니 류란지 오 따와 짬지 류디 오네 동해그란 시인 바데 시연데 아니 동해 시월 차서야 돼 류트만이 샤당 대화 숙정부 쉬지도 알아
So here one is going to meditate on mindfulness of body, close placement of that, relating to the first truth of sufferings, understanding the reality of the body, the nature of the body. We know, as we said, that is a product of these elements, fire, earth, air, and water, and that what comes from those elements is flesh, blood, marrow, and all these things. And if we think on that, just that, it is a receptacle for suffering. When I mentioned equanimity is a feeling we seldom experience, this is the type of analysis we should go through with the four close placements. Do your own checking out of it. I came to reflect that I don't think we ever really experience this equanimity, because if you reflect a bit, you'll really see that there's this, by being mindful of the body in terms of a reality, its nature is just in the nature of suffering. So when you do this close placement of mindfulness on the body, you see the very strong connection to the first noble truth, true suffering.
류트만이샤 공배 사제지 류 냉일린지 동해중 오신락도 사제지 류 냉일린라이드 카레 제가 먼저 수수 단다 백하주 삽사로지 제베이네 양지 냥곰로들이 쇼제 동해 속도
Yeah.
데데 냉일린라딩 냉에 베샤위네 티레 아니 뷰와 망게 뷰 겨와 망고 레니 미디 지메 다좀 톱사네 아니 요몬다 요마르와 이나고 밀 점제야라 가고 싶지 차 그래서 그래서나 그 듀기 겨와디 망보신레 듀디 점제야라 가고 싶어도 냉일린사들이 그 곰시디 칭제야 꿀로메네 곰시디 레용고다 오토매틱으로 레용고라 시장 알아서 류라 단다 딘데 냉일린 수수 단다 수수 가져서 제비네야 겨왕하면 사제기 레기 냉일린 디옹게 아니 동해 담면도 소고도 하죠.
I see.
제가 네 pe nenga chembo redo lu neng lenji dungi ngo sheba sa de redo.
Okay. Here, this is a really big point. We should take care around seeing the body as being in the nature of displeasure and suffering. How? Well, it turns out to be in the nature of suffering. If we think of that's why we have to take care around the actions of the body, particularly where it says here, through cultivating the close placements of mindfulness of bodies, you will understand the entity of suffering of the negative states of the contaminated body. So to turn to the example of a being that has taken many lives as a monkey, but then through entering the path gets to be an arhat. Well, because monkeys like to play a lot, somehow then that arhat likes to play, is very playful. And this is just because the nature of the 5 contaminated aggregates subject to clinging, when you get into these habits again and again of doing something with the body, those habitual habits that the body has done carry over, and they are with you. So that's why this point is where it says here. Yes.
Morin Sanders leve zeji kalan shona ani jodang walagda.
Yeah.
Tichigoda marwa simla dewada yoro simla dewa shibido de. Level le dewa yoro da dewa dowa level le dewa yoro. Dewada yoro da dewa yode yu jaja ja. Level dewa shukchimbo shore dowa. That's all the same level similar level.
Contemporarily, scientists put so much emphasis on the particles, neurons in the brain and their effect on our behavior. Of course, there is a vast effect coming from that level, but really it is the mind.
Yeah, if
it were the case that all of the information was brain stored, we could perhaps have that brain operation and take out all the negative parts and we'd be peaceful and fine and good. Then it would be all, everything would be. But if the brain was kind of emptied, what would that be like? It wouldn't be so good. Oh, sorry, I forgot to mention. So that first thing that Lord Buddha said, no suffering, you're going to do that through meditating on this one, the fact that the body is subject to the result of contaminated aggregate. It's very kind of beautifully set out, the whole connect here.
Lula migbege ane dunge shebe ngoba dijena ane dunge de khare dunge de thore ro
Yeah,
ta ligdo ane lu demanye de thore demanye se leong da de ro.
So just dependent on that basis of having a body, how we experience objects comes through how we experience those objects in terms of the bodily base, suffering or not, that leads into feelings. It's like a natural progression.
Tadi tanda di kapdila tsowa di dugri tema de dewe tadi ane zo tsowa di dug ke maji sa de dewe si da chewa dewe sebe so seba rwa seba deja rwa.
Yeah.
Ananzo da mikse mi dewe mi ananzo jumden de ming de awo shibda da deokam deba sirwa ananzo deonga la cha rwa chidang ananzo be ta ananzo be deja ge chode Deongala sukta di ro rekchanga de la cha de wangi chagwe siba de ene tela dembe siba de la chagwe chowa chegro de wangi ene lesa le wangi ene ya dungi nyongo yora chesa tanda dungi sheya ge dungi ngo khore choware dungi ya nengi le ya di ngarge ene chi le da nyomo wanda mishi mongba tinde on le on chungwa le de ya ene kunelonje ge ene 차다다 몽배 온 중앙인도 디 군중래 지단다 동해의 규디 네 방국도 스르와테 초와 초원이샤 삼로 담발라 되네 네 동해 두고면나 또봐 한다 사전이 원래 풍부되네 동행 오래샤. 다 동행이 되네. 태워 되고 있나 다 되게 동행이 유도 방고도라. 제가 군중 소화되면 예시 삼는 데만 되네. 군중 방어 잘 써야 돼. 내용도.
Secondly, Buddha said, abandon the cause of suffering. Here, essentially, we're talking about these cravings within the desire realm. Pleasant and unpleasant feelings are the cause of cravings that desire non-separation and separation, and so forth. Here, what's being talked about is quite beautifully alluded by Buddha when he talked about us beings being in the desire realm. Desire realm in the sense that we are always craving. There's that word. That word craving basically means it's a branch of desirous attachment. We're always craving objects of the five senses, forms for the eyes, and then smells for the nose, tastes, the auditory, and so forth, the tactile. We're always craving these. And as a result of that, those cravings, we create karma, and then we suffer. So then we know that the first suffering, true sufferings, is caused in karma and disturbing emotions, and underlying that is ignorance. So these three, these really karma and disturbing emotions and ignorance go to make up true origins. So it's quite clearly put there that if you do not wish to experience the result, which was the first one of a suffering body, true sufferings, you remove the cause, which are these cravings for these objects in terms of the feelings of true origins.
다들 디질라야 심테만이샤 레온데 아니 당부 공잡네와 당부 르라다 아니 르고 어디 르디 동해지 오인 바시 시운데 안데네 디 요행이 초아지 상당 아니 초아 요행 어디 마마 상당데 간다질라 베 셈데 초아 요행을 마 팀나 요아디 아니 세리기 소리질라 삼는 내용으로 디디다 심테만이샤 차용으로 뇨와디 마마 삼타요나 뇨와디 세리기 차들어고 뇨와세야디 뇨와세야디 셰버라고 세시리 버바 셰버바 데다요인데 니 딜라데네 니 심시도고요다 심시요인데 딜라 데마지바 데다나 심테문예샤 차도고요다 너 너무 곰다한데 셰고로 당고
So what we're talking about here is a succession of meditative experiences starting by focusing on the body, seeing its suffering nature, looking to where those sufferings were produced, which is the feelings, experiencing those. And as we go deeper into meditation, those feelings dissolve. Where do those feelings dissolve into? They dissolve into the mind. And what manifests is the true nature of the mind, being clear and aware, or being, let's say, clear and experiential. So what you're experiencing there is a consciousness, and you hold that experience single-pointedly of mind, and that is close placement, mindfulness of mind.
다든데 심디기 아니 세리기 차디 나와디 아니 템버투와 나와나 신지나 아니 다들로 짐바 차도고요.
Right.
다디 디민도 다 템버투와 민도 디파방고도 스데 심 템버투와 짐바 디 매워 차도야. 얘도 아니 심 템만이 비샬 되네 고봉원이 쳐봤어야 돼. 고투고 꼭대기 고된데 차도고요. 다들.
Now, if one holds the mind on its clear appearance, it's clear, it's, what did we say? It's clear wakefulness, experientially, but clings to it, being truly existent. That would be clinging at a self. And then, but that is not, that we are supposed to reverse that. So seeing the lack of true existence of the mind, then this comes to this third piece of advice of Buddha. Manifest true cessation. So cessate or stop clinging to the mind as being truly existent.
다 심디 심세리기 차들라 믹제 데드웨 심테만이샤 여위나 당원에 뒤준 차진 공리 적진 공리 등서 도와 공부이나 아니 당하나서 단다 글롱조이나니 알아서 다 민다만 다르지면서 기름조림세야다서 당 검사도와 열다 봐. 그냥 도와 제조고 요래 아니 지금 도장보단 대비 차진 개념에 대체 줘요래. 아니 다디 야고지 심배이나 아니 오늘 지 도와로 저러 낭배추다. 도와로 지려야다. 아니 아주 뒤준 심 배진 심 다고 잡다는데 딘데간에 대해서 랩톱설에 삼상도 메시지나 정말람된 배자된 아된 제심 요단 투스 말해라. 이 단대에서 자만이 시작하네 마 삼노다. 야 찬주심 본 찬주심 그 편관에 삼노다. 다 딘데 심디 아니 지 요거들이랑 시 미다고래 삼노다인데 아니 심 그딩이 미다고 라미연데 아니 최트만이 시작 차도고 요러. 아니 동반이 심 라신도 심세리기 차디 동반이라 고면도 양초되면 사용해요. 어딘데스 제지. 근데게 네 공배 람데다 람 가자. 고봉원에 람 공부 차세 람 고매데다 어디래다.
시바디라기스나.
시바디요. 초되면 살데네 람데 람 공부 차세 딱다 리기도 하다.
So when we start to come to this fourth piece of advice of Buddha, we just said to actualize the cessation. Now, fourthly, we're going to cultivate a path. So when you start to meditate deeper on the nature of mind, its lucid wakefulness or its clarity and knowing nature, and you hold the mind there, over time you start to experience that it lacks any type of intrinsic existence. That's exactly what you would be doing when you would be meditating on Mahamudra Dzogchen, doing these types of retreats, becoming more and more familiar with the mind's nature, manifesting that, getting a taste of that. Yeah, and then we can utilize that nature of mind as we get into the tantric experiences of the mind's voidness. And then we're starting to get some experience of this fourth close placement of mindfulness on phenomena. We're cultivating a valid path consciousness. It would be good to do this in our experience, day-to-day life, not just to do prayers and lots of mantras and offerings or whatever, but to do the meditations on these four close placements of mindfulness. Also, of course, to meditate on bodhicitta, because when you do the meditations on the four close placements of mindfulness, what you're actually meditating on is the mind's impermanence. And when you see that the mind is by nature impermanent and more subtly void, or the mind has like a clarity and a void quality to it, then you're starting to get into cultivating this true path, which is the fourth. No.
먼저 당보 곰자로 왔어요. 아니 다 곰잡는 상상을 개개 용구면도 알아봤지. 선배 칭로이다. 아니 내가 둘라 아니야 지지 라말라 소와다비야 땅 야지 간도에 계저지야 최로야 나사야 추버부야 두즈친 선남산으로 와. 아니야 야 곰직 잡나 야 맨다 용구요. 제가 가시에 배 탈 홍제로 가시에 배 덤버대야 근데 짠짠 고거대도 뒤 쓰고 말당에 찬양 보고로 고음 얘기 돈바에 된게 소세계세 nga thang de lama le so ta gu de tanda ngaran jong e de yung ma ne la ge yo ngaran jong da jer mo chin ge ne dong ni do ya de gom ja ji go ma ro thang bo so sa di jan me lam thang bo lo jong che dong ni gom bar ba da thang bo jer mo chin ji gom ja ro da gom ja ne dong ni ngo ne to tu yo ma ra da ane jin su da ane yang ja da sonam so dig dig jan ya che ane dene lama sowatabia lama ina yume de sowatabia ane dene pejataya sumri chene ane shindu doni dor sheda aduzo ngazo da jer ngaranzo da jer mo chenge lomar ba da ngaranzo lomar da ngonere tambulina la mi thongju dunju samasinji yorde dena la jer mo chenge loma yinge thanga nyonyorwa ngaranzo ji kyawangama jer mo chenge dewa yago shibsharo da thanda di dewa shawa de da ngazo mutu je na lagwa de 가도 이내 곰 that biji samji tenju sangma jeru muchin yin tenwa ta dajadan ba shaje to suzawe lamada sangma jigyabsum kundu ti da jeru muchin da ngo jibuji gyang yin tenje samlo dang to yin kanzu tanda beji daye sangma dang ji chö nyamlen chiye sangma jeru muchin gi sungye nya da de yoro tin za ne beji shinya dang khoya dang de la pendo chimbo.
There are times when, one was not saying not to do these things, these other things like do sadhanas and mantras and so forth. Of course not. There are times there needs to be equal. There are times when we meditate but nothing comes. No experience comes through these meditations on the 4 close placements, for example. And when that happens, it shows that we need more merit. We don't just want to meditate, but we need to confess and purify and have more merit. So in that sense, we need to do these other things. We need to confess and purify misdeeds, accumulate a vast store of merits, request and beseech and invoke these spiritual friends, and then meditate again, and then break, and then do the collections, and then meditate again, like that. Always with a degree of union and balance. If we look at the example of Lama Tsongkhapa, although he studied and meditated on the view initially, he studied a lot, but he didn't immediately settle on the correct view of reality. He found that he had to break and then again accumulate merit, purify misdeeds, beseech his guru as inseparable from the deity, and then petition again, and then meditate again, and and study, of course, study again more. And so therefore, as students contemporarily of Lama Tsongkhapa, we're very fortunate and can follow such a method. If you look at the 7 billion beings in this planet, so few could say they're disciples of Lama Tsongkhapa, which shows that in a past life there is a connect there between us and Lama Tsongkhapa, connection between us and Lama Tsongkhapa. Okay, so Buddha Shakyamuni is the source of this doctrine, but Lama Tsongkhapa taught exactly the same Buddha Dharma. And when we study, when we practice, when we hear, when we reflect, when we understand, we should do it in this manner.
다른데 디 subject somebody 그런서 양세 따제 디가도디 수 notebook단 수 신지난 수제 컨디시제 가도데 샤제네 드즈유노 데마 삼로데스 디시샤 삼로데스 당기네 야부슈죠서
subject somebody ale di tembashidi so this purpose of cultivation, how the 4 close placements are set forth by means of or connect to the 4 noble truths. Please make a highlight of that in one's book and read them again and again. Become acquainted with them.
네, 근데 지금 주 티제로 you wrote in the notebook and you bring your prayer book and leave there. And sometimes, better otherwise, sometimes your notebook look behind.
Okay.
You might teach it. 칠냐디디 야고도 아니 칠에도 따그라고
Yeah.
삼로다니 처음에도 베지다 적으라.
It's a good habit to keep the notebook close to where you do the prayers, because you often leave your studies, your notebook behind. But if you have them close to the sadhanas, from time to time you can reflect on it as you go.
아주 미망고지 처치기에서도 아니 간도베지샤 아니 검저 평화를 나와냐신. 아니 뒤에 간도 진짜 티치야 돼. 롭존시야 임베소르시제. 배 북셋너디 샤샥도?
Yeah.
디베 노르다. 디 최근에 시야디 단단 간도 롭존시야 다가라래다. 점딘데 숨어 대라래면시 딜레 요마다. 뭐네시나?
We might have this idea. The Dharma is when you do your sadhanas and sit there with a mala, think, oh, I'm doing my practice. And then the study part, you just kind of leave as something that you just do in class. Big mistake. Buddha's intention was that we know the Dharma, we study it.
The Seralaina, Beja the Chunjung to Shungjim is Joseph Shacho. Beja Tundung Kanduan and the Dwajik, Sandaya Sor, Damada Yorba, Beja Gona Nyacho Maranzo, Shungjim Beja Mission Yacho, Joseph. Nakashi Besha. That Beja Tundung Mangunya, the Shigongi, Tonsebe Shigon Gomba Chunju to the China race water. The Chichi Tiri, the Lamanini Tiri, the Yanjan in my Monegi, Yamnichia, one a dero, a Shungchamo than Katuna Jormi Sondanzo, Yamni Shungchamo than Twin and Donna, Norgumares. She measured Wajik, Beja Tundun Rovajik, Jig, Nini is in the choir, Kundu Sokora. Tati Kundu Sadwadi, Paya Wodadi, Tamanyashagi, Tembashikum down the Kandea Wodora.
In the monasteries in Sarah, really all we wouldn't have like lots of sadhanas around on our tables. We would have like the great texts, mostly the 5 great texts. That's it. And these, not collections of all these little things, but the major things to study would be our main focus of the Dharma. And these, there's a saying that these other little collections of things are like for the village monastery. His Holiness would often say, your practice of Dharma should be these 5 main treatises. Mm-hmm. Oh, sorry. So then, I missed that one. So therefore, you take these meditations like the 4 close placements on mindfulness, and that's your main body. It's like the main.
That Shiva the Mode kissing on the love sign by Yatalam, that is Jilapshana, that kind of loves and a tiny the color, that tiny the sometime that Trado, Luzo Simju Shilas, Rang Sini, Jisini, Nini, Danes, the Susan Samutan, Digestion, Esore, and Gomberche, Temper and Shera Karung Duba, Lamshu Kimba, Temper and Shera Karung Duba, several Lamshu Kimba, that Kapdigi, Mundoji, Mustembe, Tamanisha, Senior, Loba Lamji Nega Logina, Yonjogorva, Kapdi, Lamshuk, Lamla Shubamishi Yomar, the Kapdigi Lam, the Tamanisha.
Right. So then we've been over this entity on page 27, the definition of the close placement of mindfulness. We know that's an exalted knower of one who has entered a path included with either mindfulness or wisdom. Remember, this definition comes directly from Ornament of Clear Realizations. So it's assuming that he or she has cultivated a valid path, isn't it, already? It's not the case for us, though. We haven't entered a path.
Our Yavadilla, and Lutamanish is Shiche, wrong, which Yavache. That's Sanzamdi, Kabdelado, Solamne, Sanje Sabala Yulan, Chetan Lamshu, Kabdi, and Tamanyashadi, Lamnamish Yomarda, Kabdi Mustematra, Lamshu Kambala song, Yasini Sulra.
Leon Gishla. So therefore, looking at the divisions, they're divided into 4. We know those divisions, isn't it? Body, feelings, minds, and phenomena. Now, the boundaries of the close placements are ranged from the path of accumulation through to the Buddha ground. So right there, you have a Khyampa or a Noah because it's a valid path.
That Maranzo Chidan Lamashugi, Nani Tamanyasha, Kodendo Chevina, Luzo Simju Shila, Ranjitini Tane, Gombashi, Tambatan Shera Kanu Dube, Shabas Lavina, Pejan Digorta, Shabas Lavina.
Namsik Radi.
Ah.
Namsik Sedira. Tundadi. The Senidi.
Pasha.
Right.
Chidang Tamani, Manazo, Lamashula, Tamanyasha Yorwa, or the Tindeji Kogor, that Cheju Tindeji Tango.
So really, we could say it's a Noah. We're talking about when you come back to this definition, it's a knower, it's a consciousness. Leave aside the one who's entered a path, but included within either mindfulness or wisdom that meditates on the 4 bodies, feelings, minds, phenomena through examining either the general and specific characteristics of each.
That Dumbadi, the Ninjor, that the Kodon Ligris, Tashe, the Sherab, the Migbe, Migbe, you, Chambers. 셰럽지 믹베유로라 셰럽지 디지 메이 잡아치고라 셰럽게 가래 셰럽지 되는데 가래 라니 수수 쥐어봤어요 봐 칠레 유닉 심중디 셰럽로 셰럽사디 심중샤고로 갑디 단다 갑디 제가 셰럽게 오 가래서나 디 인다 마이 남지 셰럽디 남지기로 그디 인바다 마이 십 넘버 중에들 셰럽세고라 셰럽지 믹베유 and tembe maje chene 제가 셰럽지 류디 오 따연데 류지 오데 중화시 중주 칸데도 따용 거와 다디 셰럽지 믹베 유데라 아니 tembe maje chene 대tum이 지기다 딘데기 셰와지 유나 딜라다 temanya 샤스 거다 다 temanya 샤스도 딘데지 고고 거다 간다
So then looking at those, it is wisdom and mindfulness. So the attributes here of wisdom and mindfulness, it is a wisdom because the mental factor of wisdom is explained as that which ascertained what it is and what it is not. So it knows its object by that insight, by that discrimination. And then laterally, let's say you're doing close placement of mindfulness on body. You've ascertained that the object is the body and you recollect that, you do not lose it. So straight away there you have the two functions of wisdom and mindfulness together.
티시나 당원에 수시문에들아 방금 수시 장원 그 수시문에 전문이 장원에들아 그래서 심해서 new age 전문이 자라오던데 자는 멤버네스로 오던데 띵사 전문이 자다면에 비지 제거다.
So that's why we would call it the close placement on mindfulness, because it's the mindfulness that has to recollect its object and then it ascertains its nature due to the wisdom. It is not a sushi with pumpkin soup, which could be these days when we bandy around this term mindfulness. It can mean all sorts of different things. Not like that at all.
다디 다리 둔다데 전환서 디게 마 미바체 미유체 곰주체 곰베고와체 오체 여체 산삼체 다셰지도 디게 마 아니 또 아니 다 계지슈디 곰베고와디 오늘 저는 빼절 마데네 마 삼년안에 마 대제 삼노타요 중나 곰자외다 근데 곰다 곰원에 점나 어딘데 자고다 아니 흉다 튠베 곰스 자외이나 네 지준 참고 공부다 저기다 수수 똑바 줄에 깨베 림바드 마 티샤로 디드에는 수술에 똑바든데 깨야 그래와요라 심에시 디네 직도 선조디 곰라도 때자 가시 깨진닝 저거래 둠닝 저거래신데 내가다 지우르 저르들래 티 심나 똑바 제스케요 말하다 간다 다 단데 두zu 공부이나 오늘 똑바 깨야 그래와요다.
So then for the following week, please discuss these 8 categories: objects of observation, so forth, mode of cultivation, purpose, paying particular attention to the purpose of cultivation. That's very important. Why? It's very important that we actually do the work of meditating on these 4 close placements so that we get experience of it.
Subject dumbader da jeva layo mata trin lapto marsha jeva de mangbodo wade
yeah teaching
mar jeva de sha chod gyodro teaching tamanya sha chod gyodro de dunda jema law subject doing the cover cheese labda.
Yeah, so just go over the first 7. We missed the last, it seems, today. Anyway, coming back to that, experience is very important because we're following the text of Maitreya Buddha, and the goal is not just to know the subject, but to get insights in the mind, to realize it. You don't just study these things and leave them at that level so that you can say beautiful things or look good. That's all very well, but you haven't gotten the insights of the 4 close placements. The point is to get the realizations. That's what we're going for. So that's why these purpose level things are very important here. Yeah, you know, these dharmas are so precious and holy. Rejoice in that. You have these meditation advices in your hand. How wonderful is that?
Oi, that is so.
We'll stop for today.
Page 31 for the short mandala.
Lo san den be de me sa sum ji de we me se da do ne gyu ji da go re ne men de la kam ni ya ta ya mi.
Page 33, prayers of dedication.
Gyo di nyu du na la ma ga je du je je do se ya na me ga di sa
And lead all living beings without exception into that enlightened state. May the Supreme Truth bodhicitta that is not arisen arise and grow, and may that which has arisen not diminish but increase more and more. Whatever slight positive potential I may have created, by paying homage, offering and acknowledging my faults, rejoicing and requesting that the Buddhist may teach, I now dedicate all this for full awakening. I dedicate all these fruits of virtue with the dedication, praise, and the best, by the victorious ones thus gone of the three times, so that I might perform them upon the saddest deeds. May the King of Dharma, Sankapa's way of Dharma practice flourish. May the earth its crops fruitfully pacify, and all the conducive circumstances be complete. The wish-granting, wish-fulfilling jewel, source of every single benefit and happiness.